Good evening and welcome to our Honors Symposium in honor of Black History Month. Joining us tonight, we have Josh Anadu. He is one of our honors seniors this year, majoring in environmental science. And Josh has recently written an article appearing on eos.org called 10 Steps to Protect BIPOC Scholars in the Field. So he's going to talk with us about some issues regarding how we can be better allies and better protectors of our diverse student population while they're doing field work, and just some other general things concerning that particular student population and issues surrounding that and how we can be more supportive. So I'm going to hand it over to Josh. He's going to talk for a bit, and then at the end, we'll wrap it up with maybe a couple more questions if we have any from either the advisors or anyone in our chat. Those will be moderated. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other events that are happening right now at OSU in honor of Black History Month. Because of the weather last week, some of those have actually been postponed into the beginning of March. So we'll talk about those a little bit and give you guys some more information on how you can get involved in some of the events going on right now. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Josh and invite him to tell us about his article.
Thank you, Amanda. Well, I guess I would want to start off talking about sort of the motivations behind the writing of the article. I would say, and I know this not just to be the case for myself, but also for a lot of my friends who happen to also be of different backgrounds who pursue and conduct field research, that often that there can be situations and circumstances where while everyone in your group might be completely friendly and positive towards you, when you're going into the field, you're entering someone else's area. And that place may or may not always be particularly friendly or supportive of all different kinds of people. And a lot of times you're either on someone else's land or on public land. And in my experience, I've had sort of a number of different occasions where things have been awkward or tense, or I guess to say individuals were maybe purposefully ignoring me or rude to particular students who are clearly based off of just the background that they have or their skin color or how they look. And so this is something that sort of follows you if you ever are someone who likes conducting field work or generally being outside, and you look starkly different from the vast majority of people who do that. In a lot of cases, and this is the case for myself pretty much almost all the time, typically whenever I go on a trip for a class or in my own research, I am usually the only Black person there. It's not that surprising. There's a whole nother talk to be had that I actually happen to be giving at Texas A&M soon enough, about improving the number and quality of, or the numbers of people who are from underrepresented communities with respect to getting them involved in earth science majors. And a lot of that, in my mind, there's twofold aspects to making that work. The one fold is making departments better and universities better. And this is sort of what this article tries to do and what a lot of people are doing. There's unlearning racism in geosciences. That's a big event that's going on right now. A lot of it's recorded as well. But there's a lot of people are pushing towards making departments a better place. But there's also the other aspect of the simple numbers of students who are wanting to be enrolled. And those are a lot less. And I think that has a lot to do with the accessibility of outdoor activities for people with decreased disposable income. But as I said, I digress. That's another whole talk. But with regards to this In particular, I had an incident in the summer that was of particular note to me, and actually happened to be another um, Black master student with us when we were out in the field, and it was just genuinely pretty like troubling and like frightening for the two of us. And it sort of led to, I was pretty frustrated about it, and not really frustrated with my team because they weren't the ones doing anything wrong to me, but just frustrated with the situation. And so I, but and I was it was and I understand this because you want to be sympathetic to other people's. It's hard for someone to always think about other people's perspective. So the rest of our team was quite shocked at the event, whereas me and the other Black student were quite unshocked by what had occurred. And I was just frustrated that stuff like this is always happening. And for me, I'm a really stubborn person. So I know that that is not something that's going to ever stop me from doing what I want to do. But I know for other people, that is more than enough of a reason to switch their path um, if they don't feel comfortable or respected in the places that they go. And um, the idea is that when you're going out and conducting field work, you should be focused on science, right? In particular, for a lot of student field trips, which a lot of the articles in a lot of ways centered around, is this is a student's opportunity to learn field practices, learn about an area, learn techniques. It's not really a time to be worried about your safety with regards to racial tension. Like that's not what you want your focus to be. And it frustrates me that that is something that I've had to focus on and other people have to focus on because it decreases from your learning, especially if something like that, an event like that occurs. It really negatively affects your day, your week, you know, depends on how much it affects you. But for me, it was frustrating. And so I happened to make a video about it, and it sort of, the video sort of blew up pretty quickly. Wasn't expecting it. Um, but because of that, a lot of people at a lot of departments were emailing, calling me, and asking me for advice as to what to do. Because essentially in the video, I asserted that departments need to be more aware and they need to do more upfront to protect students, BIPOC students in particular. It's like that more needs to be done in advance to protect these students so we're not always retroactively trying to make things better. And so people were asking me from genuinely departments all across the world. And it was stressful because I wasn't really expecting it. I was trying to focus on my getting my graduate applications ready, getting submitting fellowship applications, working, and then getting ready for the fall semester. But I got advice from a professor that, you know, instead of responding to every single person, why don't you just write your thoughts down as to what you think and publish it? So I said, that's a good idea. So I went to EOS, which is American Geophysical Union's flagship science communication, science news, and science news magazine. And they publish pretty much, I think, not if not monthly, bi-monthly. Um, and so I submitted a proposal for something to write, and I didn't want it to just be me, so I reached out to, or particularly some. So one is Dr. Chris Jackson, who happens to be a professor of geology in Imperial College London in the United Kingdom, and happened to actually give the Royal Institution, which is like the pretty famous science institution. He gave their famous Christmas lecture. He was one of the people this past Christmas. So I got him on board, and I got Hendrada Ali, Dr. Hendrada Ali, who was the first Black geology graduate student at Oklahoma State. She is now a professor at Fort Hays State University in Kansas. And so the three of us had put our heads together, and we were like, okay, so what are we going to write? And there's a lot of pressure on us to sort of, or a lot of pressure on me to sort of basically just retell the story all over again. And that's what I kind of have begun to avoid doing, because in a lot of ways it was, people were like, we want to, we want to hear the story, we want to hear what happened. And the three of us had sort of come to this consensus that people have heard a million stories, but that wasn't solving the problem. You hear a story, you think, this is terrible, this shouldn't happen. But then nothing further goes on from there. There's no actual change. There's no, you need structured change. So with their help, honestly, they gave me the sort of push to say, no, we're not going to write it this way. We decided we were going to go the exact opposite direction and just write an article that was, this is what you can do to make the situation better. This is what you can do to protect your students in the field. So we came up with the 10 steps, and we were like, you carry out these 10 steps, and this is going to enact positive change in your department. It's going to make the field situation safer for students of color, students from different backgrounds, so that they are having better and more positive experiences in the field, or less negative experiences in the field, which inadvertently, or I guess it seems obvious to me, that research increase people staying in the field, because there's, from my publishing of the video, in addition to having many departments reach out to me, I had a really disappointing number of people reach out to me and say, I relate this. This is why I don't do field work anymore. This is why I switched from being a geology major. This is why I switched from being an environmental science major. This is why I changed my research to more computational based stuff. Like, they're people switching what they want to do based solely off of outside pressure. And me personally, I'm not. I want to be a scientist. I didn't want to be a civil rights lawyer. If I did, that's what I would have done. So I'm not the best at like figuring out and articulating all of those things. But I kind of have like a pragmatic view of people should, to the greatest degree possible, people should be pursuing what they want to pursue. And it's sort of that simple to me. And what can we do to make that better? Or what can we do to make that idealized view of life or career, what can we do to bring reality closer to that idealized view? So we're further away now. Maybe we'll never reach an idealized version, but we can make it closer. And that's sort of the attitude that I went into wanting to write the article. And sort of we in the article, it sort of lays out for most and foremost that there needs to be a shift in the way that we view these events. As I previously mentioned, there's this retroactive sort of discussion about whenever something bad happens, it's like a cycle, sort of like a news cycle. There's a bad event that occurs, people get all up in arms about it. They say it's terrible, it dies down, things get back to normal, and the cycle repeats itself over and over again. And while this makes everyone feel better when they get to say, oh no, this is terrible and blah, 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 honestly, in my mind, it's not really achieving much in the long run. And I'm like, this is not the way we need to view things. Particularly when we thought about it through, if we think about these events as hazards, the parallel or the logic that we currently been following breaks down very obviously when you compare it to typical hazards, quote, or the common hazards in the field. When you think about things like ticks, dehydration, falling, tripping, looking out for cars, sort of normal field specific dangers, departments don't let those events occur and then respond to them. They have plans in advance so that those things don't occur. There's preemptive thought. Pretty much anyone who knows anyone who runs a field program they have mandatory risk assessment. Every department requires it. You need risk assessment. Basically, it's asking the people running it to tell them what's going on, what could possibly harm the students, and how can we mitigate this risk, and letting the students know in advance, this is what could go wrong. This is what you need to do to avoid that going wrong. Drink water, you won't get dehydrated. Getting dehydrated is dangerous. So in my mind, we're like, okay, if there's some racial risk in some certain area, why are we not having mandatory racial risk assessments before we're going out into the field when we're bringing students of color into the field? Because this could be a problem for them. And it's something that needs to be thought about in advance to going out into the field. So that's sort of the ethos behind the article. And it goes into a lot of details about how these assessments can be done, the sort of trainings that the advisors and leaders of field outings need to go on prior to them leading these events. In particular, them being aware. A lot of it has to do with mandating and just including, it's really just an additional step, including a racial risk assessment in the risk assessment, and thinking, how is this area we're going to, how safe is it for these students? Do we need to implement, so is it safe? And then if it's not, what do we need to do to make it safe, right? Can we need to preemptively have discussions with the students, both the students of color and then all the students, as to any best practices, particularly talking to students of color and asking them what will make them feel most comfortable in these situations. It's essentially my thought process around it is flipping the discussion from after the event to before the event. If you're talking to the students, there's usually the students have a good expectation themselves. I can tell you, I have a fairly good expectation of where I'm going, and you kind of built it with intuition over time, but where I'm going and how relatively quote unquote safe or not safe I think that place is going to be for me. Or maybe not safe is not always the best, but how maybe welcoming that place will be. Often, most places, nothing physically, never be no physical violence or even, but there might be some sort of standoffish nature. And I could probably give you a good guess as to how that might be before we even go there, just based off of my understanding of the location. It also helps to talk to people who've been to that location before, and particularly people of color who have been to that location before, and asking them, how did you think about this field activity? In a lot of ways, so Dr. Ali, she's an Oklahoma State graduate, and a lot of our conversations, we are having similar experiences in similar places, but years apart. And it seems to me that if Dr. Ali had been consulted about what needed to be done about in X, Y, or Z place, a lot of these issues could have been mitigated, because she's someone who had been through it and could have very quickly advised faculty members as to how to carry out these trips to best avoid those situations, the places to avoid, things like that. And beyond that, the article sort of just lays out the ideas and practices that we considered, that we thought of, that might be good, whether that be having things like a buddy system, having just adapting common field practices to these novel situations, making the students aware, having a plan in advance if something is to negatively occur, so the students are aware of and feel comfortable doing what's best for them. In particular, in our situation, we were with some very expensive equipment, and we were uncertain as to how important it was to stay with that equipment. And, you know, it's sort of, after following it, everyone on our team was like, the equipment doesn't matter, your life matters more, right? Your safety matters more. And it's obvious, but also it's worth saying, so that the students feel empowered to do such a thing if such an event occurs. And the sort of having those sorts of conversations of, it's okay to take care of yourself, and what is the best way for us to set up this trip such that events like this don't occur, sort of essentially what the article goes into detail about. It discusses some practices, and it sort of just closes out again with reiterating the idea that there needs to be a shift in the way that we think about how to protect students. Um, I'm not one, some people, and it's the students should be aware of what, the students should be aware and be knowledgeable of the sort of situation that they're going into, and the leaders or advisors should also be aware of the sort of precautions that they may need to take to protect their students. And in doing so, I think that you would greatly reduce the number of these events. And these events seem to be, which these events, anecdotally, and I know that there's actually in the works of some people working on trying to study this from a big NSF proposal of just like how much do these events adversely affect students' decisions and careers. And from just my anecdotal evidence of being exposed to the video being exposed to several thousand people, there was a large number of people who told me that, it negatively affected them. And in my mind, if you are decreasing the number of those events, you might not be able to prevent all of them. But if you think about things in advance and just decrease them, it's the same way as you decreasing the chance of somebody breaking their leg while you're out in the desert, and then they now hate going outside and don't ever want to be a field scientist ever again because they had a terrible first experience when they were on a trip to the Grand Canyon or something like that. There's a lot of work that goes into these trips on the advisor's standpoint, and I can very much appreciate just how like often like pedagogically sound they are, and how much effort goes into making them enjoyable. So it's a shame that something like this can be overlooked and then just ruin all of that for a student. It's you can very easily imagine an event occurring where, like I said, I've had situations where people would not talk to me. Like I was using someone's land, and we were trying to explain why we needed to what we were doing on their land, and they would look away from me while they were talking, look at the other person, and it's just annoying and it's frustrating. And it's, for me, I've gotten used to it, and honestly, I don't care. But those sorts of encounters can really negatively affect someone's enjoyment and being able to focus on their education. And that's sort of what I thought was important. The goal is to learn. The students are supposed to learn field practices. We do all this work to protect students in the classroom. There's all these, talks, committees, endless numbers of things at every university talking about how do we make classrooms a safe environment. Well, field work is in the classroom. It's just not in the classroom, but it's a part of the class, for students that are in these sorts of fields, in the earth sciences, marine sciences, interested in these kinds of work. It's an integral part of their education. And so the same way you wouldn't want somebody like attacking them in the classroom, and you wouldn't accept someone just berating someone in the classroom for any reason, we shouldn't accept that in the field. And obviously, there's the externality of it's not the same closed environment. But that's that's why, to a large degree, it probably cannot be completely and utterly like reduced to zero. But say you're conducting a field trip over this area of land, and you're borrowing these 5 people's land, and this one person you've experienced is not particularly positive towards these kinds of students. Well, then you could just move the field trip a little bit, like move the space of it. Ask someone else to use their land. Just it's not it's there's a lot of these situations that are quite avoidable. You can talk to the person if you want to, like from the advisor's perspective, talk to them. You can if you think an area is particularly unsafe, you can reach out to like law enforcement or security or people you think might be able to protect the students. There's a lot of things that can be done, and I don't think in a lot of ways it's too complicated. There's already a lot that goes on in these programs and these like field excursions to making sure students are safe. And so in my viewpoint, it seems like just an additional step to decrease a risk the same way we decrease all other risks, and in doing so positively increase the positivity of the experience for some students. And that's sort of all. That's, I think, one of the something that all educators would be behind. Sort of the idea is for students to enjoy the things that they learn, and this is just a small step to making sure the students get to do that. And I guess there's probably, in sort of conclusion, there's maybe a larger overarching theme here, that is, or maybe not a theme, but a takeaway that it's very easy for people to not consider. It's not often, in my experience, a lot of times it's not malicious, but not consider things that are not of their background. And so, as a general, I try to incorporate this in my life as much as possible, to really genuinely try to think about things from people's perspective. And when you are at a loss for their perspective, ask. And just a lot of spaces it's inadvertently homogeneous, and and sometimes systematically homogeneous. And there's just factors as to why places or different fields or different spaces are almost all a monolith. But in those places, it's very easy to forget what other people are thinking. And I try to do this myself. And I think that it's important for other people to try to do it as well. In my mind, that's sort of one of the, if not the defining characteristic of human beings, is that we're capable of conceptualizing one another and thinking about what one another or someone else is thinking, and thinking about their rationale. And just being aware of that allows us to fix a lot of these issues. There's a there's a famous saying that is sort of unrelated, but I have adapted, which I like the saying as it is, but also I have come up with an adapted version that is, I think, useful for what I'm trying to get across. And the saying is from Confucius, and it's, we have 2 lives, and the second one begins when we realize the first one ends. And sort of that's a statement on realizing the finiteness of life and the importance of acting. And that's sort of something I try to take with me in everything I do. But I've adapted that to, in a lot of ways, we are capable of 2 lives, and the second can begin when we realize we're not the only one with life. And there's something really powerful about thinking about things from other people's perspective. And I'm very much appreciative of the fact that so many people are going out of their way to, hear from me when I don't particularly know anything. I'm just a kid. But I'm appreciative of the fact that people want to learn things from other people, and so I try to emulate and mirror that as well, and how I handle um, my encounters with other people. And I guess that's pretty much the majority of what I have. Thank you for listening. I'm greatly appreciative. Again, just a kid.
That was wonderful to hear from you, Josh. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, Josh, we definitely really appreciated you talking through the article, because when we found out about it, I know we both really enjoyed reading it and seeing not the experiences, because you said that you didn't want this just to be about the experience that was had, because we do see so many stories, but seeing how can we act before to make it so really the stories never exist. Not that, as you said, that they're going to cease to exist, but maybe finding ways through the lists that you had and using those to lessen that amount, to make it so those negative experiences aren't happening, and making it so that students do want to stay in those places that they found that they love, but they don't necessarily feel safe doing that, and shifting where they want to be. And it's great to hear how widespread your reach was with it, so that then hopefully these people are seeing these things and taking these steps, not just at a place like OSU, but around the country and the world, taking steps like this and really making it a better experience for so many different students.
It has genuinely been extremely humbling, and I, as a person, I'm not one who likes to stand up in front of people and sort of. I'm not a leader. I don't like being a leader in that sense. I much prefer to just keep my head down and do my own thing. Um, and but yeah, it's been humbling, and in that way, because of that, a bit scary. The sheer number and breadth of people and places that have reached out to me, it has been uh, it's I'm glad, I'm very glad, but also yeah, it's it's not me, but again, life isn't just about me, so in that way I'm okay to suffer through whatever little bit I have to suffer.
I think, yeah, I think it just goes to show that this topic that you've hit on, these ideas, these steps, these things that you've put out there and you've acknowledged, it's really hit I don't want to say a nerve, but it's really hit a spot with a lot of people becoming aware of this and realizing, oh, maybe this is something that has kind of been a blind spot in a lot of programs, and a lot of not just in the field of geosciences, but in other fields that do a lot of field work and things like that, that they hadn't necessarily thought about these things previously. And, like you said, you've had this really unexpected reach, and it's, maybe that's because these people are, these programs and these institutions are finally realizing, oh, we need to do something about this now. So, and because fieldwork is required for your type of degree, isn't it?
Yeah, most once you're getting in, actually not even upper division, pretty much I've not gone through a semester where I have not had a class that has a mandatory field trip, and there are classes that have extensive, multiple geology students. They have field camp, which is like a whole, like, I don't know how long, like 6-week program or something like that in the summer. And I know that's common for a lot of other students and at other universities in like marine science and things like that, that people have pretty extensive field activities and in their classes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, hopefully many people will continue seeing the article. For those that are interested in chat, or in the video, it is in the chat. And for those watching, the year will be a link on the website as well when we get this posted on the Honor Symposium page, hopefully here pretty soon. But I wanted to mention as well, one thing that I wanted to make sure people know about, and we're going to post as well, as long as it gets up before the events kind of run their course for the rest of the next, I think about 2 weeks or so, is that OSU has been running a lot of events for Black History Month. A lot of them are virtual due to COVID. So I wanted to make sure that you guys know that they are still happening. And they will be happening into the month of March, just like Amanda did mention earlier. So I'm actually going to do a brief share screen and we can look at those because we'll see that there are going to be some later this week. I think that's on Wednesday. And mainly I want to make sure that you guys know that some of them you do need to be thinking about ahead of time, because for the Real Table Talk, a crowning moment, where they're talking about hair discrimination and legislation surrounding it, such as the Crown Act, you do have to register for it. So just be aware of that. And they're doing then the next day, so I guess that's on Thursday, they're doing Guess Who Black History Edition. And they've been doing a spotlight each Friday of the month. So that'll be the last Friday of the month for that one. And they're doing a Zoom talk over mental health matters also on Friday. But then it's going to cap off in the actual month of February with the 51st Miss Black Oklahoma State University Scholarship Pageant, which will be on O State TV, not on Zoom. So you can see that, and they do have information about the pageant as well if you want to get some info ahead of time. But remember, it does extend into the month of March with their speaker series that's going to be on O State TV, going into the mobile museum, and then a mobile museum lecture as well. And you'll see that was one of the ones that got rescheduled from earlier this month due to the weather last week. So just be thinking about if that you want to be getting involved and going to any of those things, to take a look at that. That link's going to be on the website as well, and I'm going to post in the chat for you guys. So there's a lot of good things going on that you can be getting involved in with these events that are happening. And definitely, you know, we highly encourage you give a look to Josh's article because it does have a lot of really great things in it, and it walks you through those specific steps that he kind of generally hit on. You know, he didn't walk us right through all 10. That's why we can go read it, to really think critically about what can people be doing, whether as part of that community, which they already know, but us as allies, what can we be doing to help make these experiences not happen? And you know, not everything's going to get negated, because like Josh said, is, you know, we're not necessarily going to hit a perfect world as much as we want to, but what can we do to play our part, especially preparing for these types of excursions out into the field, to better support these students and make sure these things aren't happening, as best we can prepare for them. So Josh, thanks again for talking about your article. We're really proud of you guys for getting that. And, you know, actually really cool to see a former OSU graduate getting involved and seeing, unfortunately, you guys have had similar experiences, but seeing how important this really is. So thanks for discussing that with us, Josh. And we will be back next week for our next symposium series, which we're going to get an email to you guys out about later on this week. We're going to be touching on Student Government Association and the upcoming elections that you can get involved in as a student at OSU. So thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you so much.